Well, it's springtime here in southeast Queensland, Australia, so I thought I'd give you a bit of a tour and show you what's going on in our small little backyard farm. Thought I'd just start around here at the back stairs where we have our dwarf papaya in the air pruning wicking barrel. It's been in this barrel now for a couple of years and it's doing rather well. It's one of these things though, I have found that it needs a constant feed to have the fruit and the flowers form on there all the time, but that's understandable. There's only so much nutrients in a barrel that size. You might be able to make out, if I can move that leaf, that there are still more fruit coming on up the top. These guys here though, we don't really let ripen as much as we would other fruit. We prefer these guys green in a salad rather than having the fruit ripen up. In the next wicking barrel we have a carrot that has, well actually there's probably about 6 or 7 down there that have decided to go to flower. These guys here are normally a biennial to get to flower, which means it normally takes 2 seasons, but here in the subtropics we just have such great weather that these guys come to maturity within a season and we can collect seeds within 12 months. You might be able to make out, I don't know if you can, we've got all sorts of little critters down on here. We get ladybugs, we get lacewings flying around, and we also get a lot of hoverflies attracted by these beautiful flowers. One thing that I found strange with this variety, they all have a pink little dot in the center of the flower. It's like one little flower is pink and the rest of it is white. So we've got quite a few flower heads down here that are forming, and these guys down here are pretty much all starting to dry up. There's some down a little bit further that are almost ready to come off, and we will be saving these guys and sowing them again. These were supposed to be the Pusa asti black carrots, but unfortunately there was a mix up with the seed vendor and we got a different variety, which we actually really enjoyed. It was more like an atomic red carrot. So definitely we'll be saving these seeds and we will be planting them out again. The root pouch garden at the back stairs is doing fairly well. It did take a little while to get established and get going, mainly because it cops a lot of warm sun in the morning. I've rigged up a little bit of a shade cover here. It was basically just getting hammered until about lunchtime, a little bit after lunchtime. So, but it seems to have, everything seems to have taken off all right. I have thinned the cucumber down the back, down to 1 plant. Just a bit of an experiment. There was 1 cucumber set on the one that I did crop or chop, so we'll just see if that fruit actually forms. Over the back there we've got our snake beans that have popped up. I'm actually going to be trying a pruning method on those guys to see how it goes. And the sugar beet has finally started to set some new leaves. And down in here I'm pretty impressed with the way the red celery is going, and the calendula seems to like it, and the rabbit ear lettuce. And the Japanese parsley, I actually rather like the flavour of that, so we're going to be using a fair bit of that in dishes, and I've got some more seeds to sow out. And of course the basil. The basil was looking a little bit sickly in the heat, but she seems to have bounced back all right. Down here the strawberries have got a couple of flowers on them, and a couple of small fruit, so pretty chuffed about that. And over here, a little bit of a disappointment. These are the Pusa asti seeds, the 3rd batch I got from a separate vendor, a different one. I had a whole heap around here that had germinated and they were doing fine, but I think a slug or something's come along during the night and munched down a whole heap of them. I do have some more in the middle. That one there I think was attacked a night or 2 ago. It's not looking too healthy, but I have noticed some in the center just starting to germinate. So not going to be a bumper crop of those carrots. I'm actually thinking if we do get a decent amount, I'll let them go to flower and I'll save the seeds and we'll try again with some of our own seeds. We'll just go down and give you a bit of a look at some of the root pouches here. Just in this first little root pouch we have a powdered blue blueberry. This one here is just, you know, basically biding its time until we find somewhere more permanent to pop it out after the renovations. Down here a passion fruit from mum and dad. It's a self-sown Panama red. Some ginger that needs to go down the back in the ginger bed once I sort that out. And here we have the mulberry growing in a 30 litre or 7-gallon root pouch. It's doing rather well. I was just down here before and I saw a Queensland fruit fly buzzing around this fruit and the other one down there, so we'll have to get the girls out this afternoon to pick the rest of these. Even the red ones, they can come off and we'll pop them in the freezer and they can go in the next bunch of jam that Bianca makes up or something like that. Down here the lemongrass, still need to divide that, but I'll get to it. It's on the list of jobbies. Down here garlic. Still haven't picked the garlic, the bulbs are still in here, so if there's time this afternoon I might come back and pull out a couple of these bulbs. See, this is pretty much what was happening this year. We were getting a single bulb, clove, and that was it. So if I have enough time I might pop back at the end of the clip and we'll harvest them. Next to the garlic barrel there we have the banana pouches. These bananas are doing phenomenally well since they've been re-pouched. Popped up into some large 113 litre ones. Down here we just have a parsley. We pretty much all pulled all the parsley out down the back. So we're keeping these guys and we've been pulling little bits and pieces off. I actually let the pouch dry out during the week because it's not in the tray. And yeah, she didn't like that too much. Camera just flopped over. Next to it we have our long purple eggplant, one of about 5 in the patch. This one here is being blown by a fruit fly, you little cow. Excuse me guys. I've never seen them blow an eggplant before. Well, there you go. Anyway, there's a first. These guys here generally don't get blown by the fruit fly. So I'll have to see about maybe protecting a couple of these guys in the hoop house. I've honestly never seen any of the maggots in the fruit, so I wonder maybe she's just getting desperate because there's not a lot of fruit for her to blow in the yard now. Most of it's undercover. But yeah, the eggplant's definitely doing well in there. And this one over the back here is loaded with fruit as well. I dare say I'll be putting out the call on Facebook and Patreon to see if anyone wants to pick up any more fruit. Down here we have what I think is a broad ripple yellow currant tomato. If it's not, I'm pretty much all going to pull it because I would like one more broad ripple yellow currant going. Down here, this root pouch garden I featured a couple of clips ago. It's got some beauty eggplants down there. One of the sweet potato slips didn't do too well, so I pulled it out and popped a second one in, and it's thriving. It's actually doing better than the first one that went out. The Okinawan spinach, we've pulled a couple of branches and leaves off that. All the potatoes down the front have shot, or in the middle I should say, but the strawberries down the front here, this one doesn't look to be doing too well. I was worried that maybe I'd buried the crown too deep, but I don't think that's the problem. Maybe it was just too small or too old. I have no idea how old some of these strawberries are. Some are probably 5-6 years old. They do have a lifespan. So anyway, the other 3 look to have picked up, so I'm not too worried about that. The hoop house. The hoop house over the fish tank had a bit of an accident the other day. There's a little branch up there, and I was trying to chop it off. It actually came out over the top of the this end of the shade house here, and I was trying to remove it before I changed over this shade cloth because we're getting ready to put the summer shade cloth over the fish tanks. And when I cut it, I had it roped off, but I had it roped off too close to where I was actually cutting and pulling it back to the branch just up in there. Yeah, when it gave way, it just came crashing down onto the hoop house here. So that was a bit of a pain in the butt. I knew it wasn't going to clear the end of the hoop house, but I was hoping it'd just brush the side. I'll take you in and show you the damage actually. So the only damage that really happened was this bit of top hat got bent, which is no great big loss because it's only a short section, about 60 centimeters or 2 foot to the next join. And this bit of hoop here got flattened a bit. Bianca and I have been talking, and what we're thinking of doing is actually removing this section of the hoop house entirely, and we'll send an arch over like the rest of the hoop house, just up the end here. So we'll have a big arch going up that way and over, and we'll run the top hat down this way. We're actually thinking about going up about another 60 centimeters to 90 centimeters. So what's that, 2 to 3 foot? So we've got some more headroom down here. I also noticed that when I was harvesting the jade perch and moving the silver perch over from one tank to the other, I just didn't have enough room to move the net handle around. So definitely something that I need to do to make that job a little bit easier. As for how the system's going, I'll give you a quick look. She's going super green. Absolutely phenomenal growth in here at the moment. The beetroot, I'm actually running a competition on the beetroot. So check out the description below and you could go into the draw to win a $25 gift voucher with the fantastic folks at Root and Ramble. Thank you very much, Chris and the folks there. So it's basically guess how heavy it is, and all the details will be down below. These beans are going bonkers. Absolutely awesome yield on these guys, and we're getting more flowers. So these are a dwarf bean we got from Forget Me Not Seeds. Thank you very much, Sandy. So those guys, the first harvest will probably be tomorrow night, even though 1 or 2 could probably come off tonight. So this up here is a lettuce. This is doing a very, very good impersonation of a tree at the moment. She came up in a central cone, looked a bit like a Christmas tree. but she's put on a fantabulous display of branches. Fantabulous, I sound like the girls. A fantastic display of flowers up there. And we have a cucumber that shouldn't really be grabbing onto her, should be really grabbing onto this twine around the back there. The idea is to grow that guy up and over the top of the top hat here. So the sooner we can get this whole shade house raised up, the better, so we don't disturb it too much. The rest of the bed down the back there you can see is green, and this monstrosity, we'll just move outside. That monstrosity there is growing between two sections of shade cloth and is well and truly over 8 foot tall. That's the perpetual spinach. There's a number of seed heads on there. So we're going to try and save that when we put over the new shade cloth and change the structure. I'm actually going to be harvesting a load of that tonight. We're having a spinach pesto with some chicken, so that needs to come out. Down in here I started out a large 100-gallon root pouch garden. It's a bit of a mishmash of different bits and pieces. There was a strawberry plant that had a load of runners on it, so I planted that out in there. And this one here is an heirloom one, and as you can see, it's not liking the heat here too much. So the bed's well and truly watered. It's not over watered. It's just a nice moisture level in there. So it's just the amount of sun it's getting. When we put over the shade cloth, this side here will have a 30% shade cloth over the top of it, and that should just take some of the sting out of the midday sun for these plants. Over the back there, I popped in a couple of pieces of ginger. And in the center here, I sprinkled some seed when I was sowing out the aquaponics the other day, but for the life of me, I can't remember what. So it's going to be a bit of a surprise. Just quickly, I'll show you down in here. The beetroot and the rabbit ear lettuce is going really well. And I did sow out some carrots, as I mentioned, just down in here, but I haven't seen any germinate as of yet. We do have some volunteer lettuces popping up though, and there's big sisters over there in the corner. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. How many germinate. Just down in this section of the patch we have another eggplant in this top bed. This one here has got a few fruit on it, but this wicking bed, I haven't been filling it up. I've just been letting it go fallow, and the rain's pretty much well supporting the few plants that are in here. As a result, it doesn't look that happy, and you can probably see the snail slime or slug slime on that leaf. So I'll have to look in there and see what's going on. I also think that it's got a case of the mites. Just looking at the top of that fruit there, that brown bronzing is generally something that I've seen with the mites. Down here we have the turmeric aromatica. This one here is the one that gives us the nice flower, but unfortunately it's not very medicinal, doesn't have a lot of curcumin in it. So I will be retiring this plant. I might offer it up locally for people to come around and grab some if they want it, but I'll just stick with our orange longa, the turmeric longa, which is supposed to be more therapeutically valuable. Grandma eggplant. This old lady's been going for a few years now. I keep cutting her back every winter, and every spring she comes back. Actually, by the end of winter she starts coming back. And as you can see, she is loaded with fruit. And we have more fruit down here, some nice big ones to harvest, a load down in there. So definitely more eggplant than I know what to do with. I'm the only one that'll go out of their way to eat the eggplant. I know Bianca will eat it, but she's not a huge fan of it. And the girls, you know, if I chop it up small enough, they don't even know it's in the meal. This plant here will be coming out of the bed though, because this bed will be one of the beds dug up to fill in those little wicking beds over there. I've been mucking around with them this morning. Just a galangal that I've moved over into the shade, and a couple of more gingers I've moved into a shaded spot of the yard. Over here, pretty much all round about 11:30, 12 noon starts to get a nice amount of shade. So I've decided it's a perfect spot for the ginger, and I've leveled out that bed there, and I've popped in some slotted ag pipe with the cloth around it. That's going to be set up sometime this week. I was just mucking around this morning trying to sort out where bits and pieces were going. There was the compost cage there, and I've basically shoveled over all the compost into a pile here, and we'll be using some of that back in that wicking bed, and some of the soil will come from the wicking barrels I have all around the yard, and a couple of root pouches that need to be emptied out, and I'll top it up with soil from some of the beds we're pulling out that I'll show you in a moment. So I've got another one over there. This one here will have the ag pipe traditional, or how I make them anyway, self-watering wicking bed reservoir with some sand, and that other one over there I might use an insert, more like a global bucket style bed. We'll just wait and see what happens there. A couple of the pups from the bananas, actually a couple more pups on the bananas up there I didn't show you, but these guys here are actually going in a little mound that will be created in this spot to grow them. I'll probably use, by the time we get around to it, some of the soil from that bed and maybe some of the compost from here if it's left over. Make a bit of a mound, plant the bananas in, and away we go. Down here I set up the water chestnuts earlier. It's basically just a barrel, it's a half 200 litre or 50 gallon barrel, and I filled it up with bits of potting mix and soil from different root pouches around the yard, and popped in 3 water chestnuts. Probably could have only done with 2 in there, but I've thrown the 3rd one in anyway just to see how it goes. The branch that came down over the hoop house, this is it. I pretty much all mulched it all up, and I've just popped it down in front of the compost cage. It got moved over here. There is a little comfrey patch there, but what I did was I dug half of it up, and I'm going to pot them out, maybe giveaways, or I might plant them somewhere else in the yard. And I put a lot of the uncomposted material from the compost, the stuff that was on top, just in there to start off with. This isn't going to break down too well because it's a little bit too light and fluffy at the moment. So what I'm going to do is mulch up a whole heap of that Chinese elm over there and toss that in with a couple of bags of well-aged horse manure, and hopefully that'll encourage a few worms in there. It'll heat up first as the thermophilic bacteria move in, and then once it cools down, the compost worms will move in. We'll end up with some nice compost that I can just spread around this area. Over the back here, there was a self-sown cucurbit of some description. I don't know if it's a pumpkin or a zucchini, but what I did was I mounded up some soil around it, gave it a couple of scoops of compost from the pile over there, and just popped on some sugarcane mulch around it to help keep the moisture in, and hopefully it will do really well in this area. Part of the reason I decided to put the compost cage here was it would also offer shade to that little plant there, so it's got more than one use, so hopefully that little fella there will take off. I'll just take you over here to our blueberry. It's done really well this year since we've had this cloth on there. We have a load of fruit. I'm not going to take the cloth off. I actually came down here last night and had a bit of a sneak peek with Bianca after she came home from work, and we had a check this morning and they're not quite ripe. They're still hanging on. They're not ready to come off, so I'm going to check them tomorrow morning and hopefully we'll get a couple of dozen berries off and we can munch on them without the girls knowing, if we're lucky. Just up in this little area here, this is where we will be putting the chicken coop. If this is the first time you've seen a clip on our channel, basically this was all under hoop house before. These 2 beds I've just let go. I'm not really doing much with them because in the next month or so they'll be removed, and so will all these pavers, and I'm setting up a chicken coop probably round about where that barrel is to where I'm standing just down here. Actually probably that pole there, or post I should say, will be the chicken coop, and then they'll have the run of this area here all the way up until about a say 3 feet or a metre from the edge of that bed. So this will be their day pen area, and we'll have a dwarf mulberry up here in the centre that will give them some summer shade, and during winter when the leaves fall off they'll have some winter sun, and we'll have little green feeder areas and all that sort of thing. So that's the plan. Just here we have the cabbage that I let go to flower, and it's become a bit of a habitat for, there's a little hoverfly in there, I don't know if you can see her, just hanging around there doing her thing. Yeah, it's become a bit of a habitat for aphids, absolutely loaded with aphids, but why I've let this happen is it means we're going to end up with a decent ladybug population. You can probably see a couple there, there's a couple up there getting their Barry White on. So there's a couple more actually over there, just in there. So we're definitely getting a lot of these little ladybug larvae, and I noticed one just down in here, if the camera will focus on it. Just there is a ladybug larvae pupating, and I have seen a couple of their larvae just hunting around here. That one there looks like he's actually got an aphid in its mouth. So they're definitely boosting in numbers. They're not going to save this plant. I mean, this plant is a goner. This amount of aphids on there, it's going to take a bit of a miracle for them to actually get them all under control. But yeah, definitely does provide fodder for these ladybugs so they can do their thing and populate the rest of the patch. This little section here was pillaged the other day for an Instagram mate, Brock. G'day mate, if you're watching. He popped around the other day to pick up some root pouches, and yeah, we had a bit of a chat about the bees. He also keeps the native bees and other plants, so I gave him some leeks, and I think he may have got some turmeric and some other bits and pieces as well. Hope they're all growing well for you, mate. I'll give you a bit of a look at these bees. It's a little bit late in the afternoon, so they're not going to be that active. So I'll just set up the camera so they're not that shaky. So these little guys here are Australian native stingless bees. This variety is called Tetragonula hawkingsi. So they're basically a pollinator bee. They're not something that you would try and farm commercially for their honey. I know some people do have them for their honey. We're pretty much all keeping them just for the fact that they're going to help pollinate our patch and other places. Before we go, we'll just finish off in the little hoop house here. It had a massive clean out during the week. So in here we had a massive bed of volunteer parsley, some volunteer French marigolds. I had 3 Roma tomatoes in there. There was a couple of sage plants, only one survived. A smattering of perennial leeks down the middle and some onions, and a volunteer warrigal green, of course. These beds actually got pretty much all smashed by a couple of pests. The tomatoes were done in by a little mite. I'm not 100% sure what sort of mite it was, but it definitely, yeah, they really liked feeding on the Roma tomatoes. I ended up getting pretty much around about 5 kilos worth of fruit off the plants, so no huge loss. So I've got some upstairs now in the dehydrator, and we're going to make up either some tomato powder, or Bianca said maybe just some semi-dried tomatoes to pop in oil. And down here we also had some silver beet and a lot of marigolds in this area here. When I was pulling out all the plants, including the silver beet, because they had evidence of mite damage on them, I noticed that the understory down there was just rampant with whitefly. So what I think has happened is the whiteflies come in here and killed off a lot of the marigolds, and probably had a hand in damaging the tomatoes as well. So I pulled every plant I could from this bed that looked like it had been damaged by them, and stuffed them into some old potting mix bags, and I actually have them solarizing up the side of the house. Solarizing is basically heating up plant material to either kill pests or the seeds. I figured it was just a better option than throwing all that green material in the bin. I'll solarize them for a week or so, and then all that plant matter can go into the compost cage and turn back into usable material for the patch. Down here we have our sweet peppers or capsicums, depending on where you live. And here we have, where are we? We have our Marconi. They're not the giant Marconis, they're just a red one. Yeah, they're looking rather good at the moment. We've got some nice fruit on there. There's another one there with a couple of fruit on it. I just noticed a couple of whiteflies buzzing around, so I might have to give the patch a spray. Here we have our Jimmy Nardellos. These guys were pruned right back over winter, and this is their second flush. And this plant here, if I can reposition the camera, this plant here has got some spectacular looking fruit on them, a lot bigger than the ones we got through winter. We actually had this fruiting through winter, and that would have been about the biggest fruit we got from them. But these guys up the top here, they're just looking so healthy, and we've got some more little flower buds forming. I have noticed on one of the, here we go, just down here, we've got a little bit of evidence of mite attack just on the fruit where it's browning off. So I definitely will be getting the beneficial mites in. I'm going to give them a spray with an insecticidal soap first, and then about a week later I'll introduce the beneficial mites into the hoop house and see if we can keep them under control, because I don't want to lose such a great looking crop again. Down here we have a root pouch with a couple of ginger in it, and there's 4 pouches down there with some more ginger. I was just taking too long basically to plant these guys out and setting up the wicking bed, so I planted those guys out in those 4 pouches as just an interim place, and then I'll move them out to the wicking bed once it's all set up. These guys in here, I'm pretty much all going to grow those 2 plants just in that 60 or 56 litre root pouch. What's that, 15 gallon root pouch, just to see how they go as a bit of an experiment. So yeah, on a whole, I'm pretty happy with the way this little root pouch wicking garden's going. You folks thought I forgot about the garlic, didn't you? I didn't, I just thought I'd add it here at the end. So I'm not holding out for much of a huge harvest. Oh, we've got a nice little clove there. And that one's fallen off. This parsley might as well come out, I think. So there you go, folks, not a bumper harvest of garlic by any means. These guys here we're just going to take up to the house, and we'll be using these in our cooking. I won't be saving any of these cloves for next season's crop. They just didn't perform that well, whether it was the climate or whether it was just the varieties. Next season I'll stick with the Glen Large. I'll buy some seed garlic from a known supplier. Glen Large was developed for our climate, or very close to our climate here. I'll have another crack with that. So there you go, a bit of a garlic harvest. So there's a bit of a look at what's going on in the patch, folks. I mean, some things like those eggplants, they're just blowing me away. They are just giving us that much fruit at the moment. We're going to have to start giving them away again. And the greens from the aquaponics is just astounding. The amount of harvest we've had from those two perpetual spinach by themselves, not to mention the chard over the back and the Okinawan spinach and the mushroom herb. It's just phenomenal how productive a little system like that is. With the soil beds, as soon as I get a handle on those white flies and the mites in there, I'm sure it'll be up and running again and providing us with loads of produce. I really do think the collards would probably do a little bit better in there, and so will the tomatoes. Tomatoes just have a habit of getting their roots to take over aquaponic grow beds, so I'll try and keep them out of there this year. Also, I'd like to thank all you lovely folks out there who have subscribed to our channel. We hit 80,000 subscribers this week, which just blows my mind that many people have decided to bookmark our channel by subscribing. I know not everyone who subscribes watches everything we put out there. People like myself like to bookmark channels so they can come back and watch the clips they like. And I take it a lot of people bookmark this channel for the aquaponics or how to make a wicking bed or the chicken feeders and don't catch up with the other clips. I'm fine with that as long as the clips help you folks. I don't really care. So once again, thank you to everyone who subscribed, and also I'd love to send a huge shout out and thank you to the folks on Patreon who have been supporting my channel for a few months now. We're actually going to have another hangout today, maybe before this clip is posted, maybe after this clip is posted. We'll just wait and see. Those guys over there, they've been great at supporting the channel. Patreon, for you folks who don't know, is basically a way you can help support content providers or makers like myself, just giving us a little bit of coin here and there, maybe for a cup of coffee, maybe for a new high-def camera, you never know. So check it out, there'll be a link in the description below if you want to see what's going on over there. But I will stop rambling on. Thank you again. Don't forget the beetroot competition. Hope you enjoyed the clip and a little bit of a look at our backyard farm, and I'll catch you next clip. Cheers folks, have a great one. Bloody noisy birds.